Let's
Welcome,
do
welcome,
this.
welcome to the Diesel Alliance first Fireside Chat live. Yes, live and in action. So we've got two amazing guests today to host us off, Joanna Byrne and Vinny Himes, some of the best to do it, who lead by example, not from theory, but from practice. They're going to guide us through some of their adventures and their journey along the way. So welcome to Fireside Chat. If you're watching the recording, share this with a friend and make sure you tap in with us live on the next one. Joanne, Vinny, hey, how are you doing?
Good, good. Glad to be
Well,
here.
beautiful day
Oh,
in the neighborhood.
I love. Is that a horse behind you, Vinny? What was?
It is a small horse named Groot.
Hey, girl. I am gonna hop off so you'll hear my voice, but you won't see my face. Let's see, remove spotlight, and I want to jump right in. Joanna, let's start with you.
Uh-oh.
How did you first get into the diesel industry?
Oh
Where did
gosh.
it all begin?
Man, I should have sent you a picture. So it really started. I grew up in agriculture. My dad was in construction, but we also had horses, and I grew up in agriculture, and I was like, I am going to be a horse trainer. And if you know anything about horses, you have to have reliable equipment, and everything I had was diesel. And I got to a point where, like, the horse market crashed. We had 2008 crash, then we had the horse market crash in 2011. And I was struggling financially because of droughts and stuff in 11. And I had had a couple of 7.3 power strokes, and I knew enough to know that I was not getting like the best deal when I was having my truck worked on. And we'll leave the details of a couple of those incidences out. But because I was so broke, I wasn't just training horses, I was also working at an auto body shop and a parts department. And one thing led to another, and I'm leaving a lot out, right? This is like a lifetime of experience, but that it kind of rolled into that. And then I took a job in Virginia and took off in one of my trucks, and had trouble with the truck all the way up there. I hadn't had it very long. Didn't know its service history very well. And where I was in Virginia, there was no diesel shops, and the truck wasn't getting me home. And back to Texas, anyways. And a guy, through a mutual friend, I met a guy out of Pennsylvania. He took off work and drove. He worked for International. He drove down and fixed my truck. I had blown injector O-rings, and he took my truck apart in a barn and showed me how to work on it. And he goes, you know, you should think about going to diesel school and learn how to do this. You could do this. And I was a little bit mechanically inclined anyways. And from just growing up farming and stuff. And I kind of blew him off, and I was very broke, by the way. Like, I was living on my horse trailer. I was very broke. And I said, what do I owe you? And he goes, pay it forward. Anyways, so saddled with that responsibility, I got all of that kind of fell through, which was expected when I got there, and it wasn't as advertised. And I moved back to Texas, and I went to diesel school, and it's just one thing after another. But I've always been in performance, and Fast and Furious kid, grew up watching that. You don't get a Lancer Evo with a diesel though. So, but I grew up on 7.3s, and so here we are.
I love
And then
it.
I taught. Well, I mean, I kind
Wait,
of
wait,
left
wait,
some
wait.
out. I
No,
taught, yeah.
just the
So
beginning. Just the beginning. Because we're gonna
yeah,
get to that. We're gonna
yeah,
get to like why we invited you here and how we're gonna help members get their business to the next level.
yeah. Like I
Vinny,
said, it's a long story. So I'm sure Vinny's got a long one too.
and I love that. No boring stories. Vinny, where did it all begin?
Working at a log home place in Montana at 15 years old, and one of the yard hands filled up a all-terrain diesel telehandler with gasoline and blew up the motor, blew up the engine, and so there was no diesel mechanics in the middle of BFE, Montana, and so they were going to bring a mechanic in. It was going to cost an exorbitant amount of money, and I told the owner of the log yard, I was like, man, I've been tinkering and working on stuff my whole life, and cars and lawnmowers and whatever else. I was like, let me take a shot at it and see if I can fix this thing. And so I got basically Caterpillar's version of a Chilton's manual for that particular piece of machinery, and tore the engine down and ordered all the parts that I needed and put it all back together. And the stupid thing actually ran when I got done. So that was that was day one, and I was hooked. And I also grew up with 7.3s, ranch kid, horses, cows, sheep, goats, the whole ranch scene in Montana. You had to have trucks to get hay and firewood, and 7.3s were reliable and easy to get. And so I kind of worked my way up through 5 different 7.3 Power Strokes and ended up working at a diesel shop part-time as a hobby. And here we are 23 years later, still trucking.
And as they say, the rest is history.
That's it.
So, really, when did you connect with Power Hungry Performance, TDA? When did those stories collide?
So Bill and I actually met a long time ago, probably 15 years ago, out in Utah, and just kind of inadvertently stayed in touch through social media and stuff. I was out in Montana. He was in Salt Lake at the time, ended up back here in Georgia. Many years later, I ended up here in Georgia running a big diesel shop here. And we started doing business with Power Hungry, just selling the hydro chip tuners. We did a couple of pretty big medium duty truck builds that pushed us into the Orion Reef Flash system, also with Power Hungry. And then one day I changed my Facebook status from working at that diesel shop to no longer working at that diesel shop. And I don't know how Angela saw it so fast, but I barely changed my Facebook status, and Angela was calling my phone asking if we could meet for dinner. So that was 20 January, February, Marchish of 2023.
It's beautiful. You couldn't have it any better if you planned it, unless maybe she did plan it. Shout out to our founders of Power Hungry Performance, Bill and Angela. Joanna, or Joe, as it's effectively called. When did you cross paths with the infamous Byrnes?
Oh boy. So I met Bill first. I don't think I met Angela at the same time as I met Bill. It's been so long. So it would have been TS Outlaw 2013. In November of 2012, I bought Bob Riley's stepson's truck, the infamous tourmaline green F-350 that was in 8 lug, and drove it home from Florida. And so when I went to TS, I took that truck to TS with me. And we won't even talk about the Arkansas incident. That's no story.
Well,
But anyways,
for
we
anyone
did
that
get
may not know, I feel like most people know, but for the one person that doesn't, what's TS?
TS Outlaw used to be a big competition in
Mhm.
Bowling Green, Kentucky, but I think they still have one there. It's just under a different name.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not under TS anymore. I won't comment on any of that.
Moving on.
But Bob Riley owns Diesel Site. If anybody doesn't know that, sorry, I'm making assumptions here because there's a bunch of people in here I know who know that. Anyways, that's how I was introduced to Bill, because Bill tuned that truck, and then when I finished my white truck, I had Bill write the tunes for my white truck, and so that's how Bill and I met. And I think
Oh,
we
you
met in
started as a
person the
customer
first time.
first.
Yeah, because I liked how that truck drove, and I wasn't done with my white truck when I bought it. And Bill wrote my tunes, and yeah, he doesn't know this. I drove it to New Orleans from Lubbock, Texas, without tunes on it, with 250 over 200s and a stock turbo on spring break. So yeah, that was fun. Anyways, but he didn't have my tunes done, and I wanted to drive the truck. I also made passes at a racetrack with it on the way down there. But yeah, so that's how I met Bill and Angela. So
I love it. So, quick, hold on, let me do this. Quick commercial break. If you're just joining us, I see Matt, I see Jim. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is our first fireside chat for the Diesel Alliance community. Do us a favor. I'm going to put the link in the chat. Share this to your social. Tell a friend to tell a friend. They can join us. We will have some space for Q&A at the end. About 15, 20 minutes. We definitely want to keep this interactive and talk about what you want to talk about. So excited to have you all here. So, okay. Now we're all big, one happy Diesel family. Tell me, when you talk about the Diesel Alliance, We talk about building community and a love for diesel, small, medium, large engines. What does that mean to you? Who should be in the room? What are they going to get out of events like this and being part of the community? Joe, go ahead. You're on a roll.
Okay. Oh, careful. Don't give me too much control. Um, for me, I think this idea of collaboration. I mean, y'all, I told y'all I was told to pay it forward. I'm sure I have probably more than I really needed to, but um, doing this is independence. It's not, we shouldn't be at each other's throats. We should be supporting each other. There's way more work out there than there are us. And I don't see any reason for us not to support each other and be successful because, when you collaborate with each other, that's where innovation comes from. That's where great ideas come from. That's where solutions that nobody else has come up with comes from. And for me, that's what TDA is this idea of we're coming together and sharing ideas. We'll have very different experiences and we can learn from each other. Nobody knows everything. And I think being able to put our heads together and come up with solutions and help each other out is really, really important for the long-term success of our industry.
Maybe. There it is. Vinny, what's the Diesel Alliance mean to you, and what do you hope to that person that's on the fence?
For me, it's educating shop owners. Um, when I moved to Georgia, I went to work for a shop that was very, very small, and I was supposed to build them a website. Online e-commerce was kind of my past after working in a shop as a technician. Broke my back, couldn't turn wrenches anymore, couldn't lean over fenders anymore, so
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
saddled up
whoa,
to
whoa.
it.
Vinny, buddy. You're just like, oh, it's Tuesday, it's sunshiny outside, broke my back, had some Taco Bell.
Pretty much.
What? No, not pretty much. What happened? Were you under engine? Were you dirt
I
biking?
was so I had a company that I started when I was 20 years old, building timber frame and log homes all over the Northwest. And we were building a 3-story timber frame home up in the mountains in Idaho in the middle of winter, and I was shoveling snow through a door opening that didn't have a door in it yet, and got way too much snow behind the snow shovel and took off running across the living room to like try and shove it out the opening that would someday be the doors out onto their patio. And as I shoveled over the course of about an hour, it just started creating ice. And on the last pass, literally the last pass to get to work that day, get all the snow out of the house so we could start doing production, I slid and fell 3 stories out of the side of the house and landed on my butt and fractured 3 vertebrae and crushed 2 discs.
That's what we
And
call the old Charlie Brown.
yeah, yeah. So I was hobbling out of a gas station with a big back brace on, a broken leg, and a cast, and stitches. And one of my buddies that had a diesel company out in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, saw me coming out, and he was like, "Man, what happened?" Told him. He was like, "Why don't you come help me answer phones?" And I accidentally was decent at sales, and not because I'm good at sales or I've ever been trained in sales, but I spent a decade as an enthusiast bolting these parts onto my friends' trucks for fun. And when people would call into this place to order parts, I'd be like, I could tell them, hey, you don't want that part because it's made out of plastic, and that plastic over time will dry, rot, and crack. You want this one. It's made out of a billet aluminum and it'll last forever and it's $30 cheaper. And so it was just this real world common sense desire to be helpful, desire to help people save money, help people avoid bad situations that I had encountered with customers, myself, with parts. And I just like educating and teaching people. And so when I ended up here, coming out of the e-commerce into a shop space and working at actual shop, um, I had no clue what I was doing. Like I literally showed up. They're like, build us a website. So I spent the first 6 months getting their website done. And then it was kind of slow to take off. And so I felt a little worthless because the phones weren't ringing. People weren't ordering parts. The website wasn't performing yet. It takes time for Google to crawl your site and all that fun stuff. And I just needed to be helpful until that happened. And so I started, kind of pushed myself into a service writer role. No clue what I was doing. I was selling labor based off my experience. So if a 5.9 Cummins came in, I was like, well, I could throw a turbo on that thing in 2.5 hours. So I'd sell 2.5 hours. Well, now I got a technician that's not as skilled as me or hadn't done it as repetitiously as me. Now he's pissed off because I undersold the hours and I didn't mark up the part. The part has a map price and an MSRP price, and the map price, is about 20% profit from what we pay for the product to what we sell it to the end user for on an e-commerce situation. Well, in a shop environment, that 20% profit margin doesn't work. And it took me time to figure this all out. The shop owner and I were going head to head. They'd never had a service writer. And so I accidentally was losing them money because I didn't know what I was doing. And so I had to educate myself, figure things out. And by the time I figured these things out and educated myself and became a very valuable service writer, I started hearing other shop owners voicing the same concerns and complaints that the shop owner that I worked for was voicing. And so I started having these conversations with other service writers, other shop managers, what have you, and at events and things throughout the industry. And so started educating other shop owners and managers on what I had learned. And I was asked to speak at the Survive and Thrive event up in Kentucky for Thoroughbred Diesel. And this is all I talked about was just how to increase your profit margins realistically, how to sell your customer a really, really good experience. Stop selling parts and labor and sell your customer a really good experience. When I got the parts and labor out of my head and I started thinking about the customer, what did the customer expect? If I sold the customer this part and something goes wrong with this part, what's a tow bill going to cost? What's it going to cost to push another paying customer's truck off of a lift and push this truck in and get it, fixed right away? And so I started looking at that. And so when customers would come in, I would give them a price and they would kind of balk at the price because a lot of times they were getting a second or a third opinion. And they'd be like, well, why are you this much and everybody else is this much? And I would explain to them, well, if something goes wrong, do you want a free tow or do you want to pay for the tow? Do you want to get in right away or do you want to sit out in the back lot and wait for a bay to clear up? And I started explaining that. And so the customer started selling themselves the experience that they wanted. I just put a dollar amount on it. And so when I started doing that and talking to other shop owners, I realized very quickly there was a lot of super frustrated shop owners that were stuck in the trap that is book time, and they were stuck in the trap that is map pricing versus MSRP versus marking it up your own. And that number is different for every single diesel shop. It's not one size fits all. You got to look at the overhead, the number of employees, the square footage, the bays, the tooling, and you got to figure out what works for each shop. And that's just kind of where I've ended up. And it's something I really enjoy. Like when I get a phone call from a shop owner, like, hey man, ever since you helped me out, we've doubled our profits over last year. Like that's a pretty freaking awesome achievement. So that's what gets me excited and that's what motivates me. So
Yeah, I love it, Vinny. And so just a sneak peek, we're having Fireside Chat as an introduction to our training series, but we're going to talk about service writing. We're going to talk about customer experience. We're going to talk about dealing with problem customers. We're going to talk about increasing your profits for the shop. We're talking about training and hiring. So everything you need to be more successful than you are, whatever your stage of your business, that's why we want you here. That's why we want you to come back. So I'm so excited, Vinny, you're sharing your journey. I love that it's from experience, not something you read out of a book or saw on a podcast. Some shade, right? We do this every day. Joe, you similarly, I mean, you went to school, but then you got your hands dirty. You start training. Talk about how you take what's up here and share it with the world.
So, this used to piss people off at the college. Training horses is easier than training people. Uh,
As a
but
trainer, and I haven't even trained horses, I 100% agree with that sentence.
yeah. So, but a lot of it comes into and this is one of the things, even though I don't teach at the college anymore, I'm still a certified dealer instructor for Deere. And this was one of the reasons that they sought me out is they've got great technicians who don't have a clue how to teach. And they're like, maybe they want to, but they don't know how to communicate that. And it's no shade thrown against anybody. but teaching is a skill set just like everything else. And so when it comes to communication, one of the big things is being able to be on the same level with someone and to grade your vocabulary and your language so that they can understand you, and then you can bring them up to the level that you're on or the level that you have to operate in. Because anybody who does this knows we deal with a lot of technical jargon and a lot of like industry specific jargon. And so one of the big things about just communication in general in the industry, whether it's with a customer, you're trying to teach a customer, you're trying to teach another technician, is making sure that everyone's communicating with each other back and forth. And I tell my students the same thing that I tell my customers. There's no dumb question. I just had one of my long-term clients called me about 2 hours ago. She said, "I'm so sorry. It's not an emergency," because she only calls when she needs something. She goes, "I cannot find my EGT on my monitor on my truck." And it's not an edge. And I told her, I said, "I don't know how it works." I said, "Let's get together this weekend when you're not working, and I'll see if I can help you figure out why it's not showing up on your main screen." And the thing is, she's like, "I feel like I'm asking you a dumb question." And then I told her, I said, "You're not asking me a dumb question. It's something you and I both know. I don't mess with your monitor. It was on your truck when you got it, you know?" But she felt comfortable asking me that because I've told her over and over and over again, as I've had her as a client, there is no dumb question. The only dumb question is when you didn't ask. And so all that comes down to is kind of getting the shame out of it and making sure everyone understands the language.
That's beautiful. I love getting the shame out of it. That's what we want here. We want a place where people can kind of share their knowledge and get some knowledge, where no one feels dumb or stupid for asking a question. It's even asking the question twice. 3 times we might make fun of you a little bit. That's because we love you.
Well, if you have to ask me 3 times, then I didn't understand your question.
I wish I had one of those bongs. Boom. That's good. Thanks, Joe. So we're creating a space for you to build your shop. What was let's go with one, maybe you've got two. What's one thing you see over and over and over again where that shop owner gets in their own way? Joe, we'll start with you, and Vinny will get you next.
I think the biggest thing that I see, and I struggle with this, is I know what I think it should cost, but it is 2026 and nothing costs that anymore. And that is like the biggest conversation that I struggle with is like, this is the value of this product. You have a $80,000 to $100,000 truck. Like maybe it's a 3rd-gen Dodge and that's not what it costs new, but that's what it's going to cost to replace it. And so explaining the value and the price difference, even pricing stuff correctly. So not just communicating it to the customer, but like, I'll go in and I'll write a ticket and I'll go, "Golly, I don't want to pay that." But I have to remember, I'm looking at parts prices for 2026 because this post-COVID world is very, very different and that's not going away. But that is very hard to break that barrier down for people. But a lot of times I go, "Okay, that's a $20,000 engine. That's a $15,000 transmission. You're in a $100,000 truck. Do you want the $999 part or do you want the $59.99 part? Because there's a big difference in quality here." And that's price is not always a reflector of quality, but in that case, for that example, yes.
Sure, sure. Shout out to Mitch Olson. He said, customer education is the key. Let them know we're not just pulling these numbers out of our ass. Like, there's a reason we're making this recommendation. Like Vinny said earlier, this is made out of plastic. This is what's going to happen. This one's made out of aluminum. This is going to be a better option. And save some money. Like you said, price isn't always an indication, but it's definitely a good place to start. I love it. Vinny, what are you seeing where people get in their own way?
The biggest problem I encountered at the shop when I first got here was very small, 2 mechanics and the owner. And a lot of times, the owner had nicer, more abundance in tooling. And so, you'd have a technician that was working on a job, getting halfway through, and then that technician would round out a bolt or something, and he would get frustrated and jump in and take over the job, and make a big scene about how much better his tools were than the technician's tools. That's very counterproductive. It just breeds animosity within the workplace. And so one of the programs that we implemented there was, instead of hiring cheap technicians, which is kind of a problem that a lot of shop owners back themselves into. They'll interview 5 different technicians, and one guy's $15 an hour and one guy's $45 an hour. Well, the guy that's $45 an hour has got a gigantic Snap-on toolbox with 20, 25 years worth of really high quality tools that he's acquired, and he has to make $45 an hour. When you hire that $15 mechanic, he's probably got a bunch of crappy tools that he's acquired from Sears and Roebuck, wherever, Home Depot, Ace Hardware. They're just run of the mill, homeowner grade tools that might get used once or twice a year to work on something mechanical. When you're a diesel technician, you're working on mechanical things every single day, 8 to 10 hours a day. So you got to have good quality tools, and the better quality tools, the more expensive the mechanic. The more expensive the mechanic, probably the more knowledgeable he is, probably the faster, more efficient he's going to be. And so we saw that pattern building very quickly. We had a bunch of cheap mechanics, and we had a bunch of comebacks, and we had a bunch of problems. We didn't go out and hire the most expensive mechanics. Instead, what we did is as a company, we went on the Snap-on truck or the Mack truck or whatever tool truck was coming to the shop at the time, and we would outfit that $15 mechanic with a really nice toolbox and the basic hand tools. And so putting that investment into that mechanic, it bred loyalty, for one. Now all of a sudden this guy sees that you've invested, $3,500, $4,000 worth of tools into him, and you start them on the easier jobs and you work them up into the more complicated jobs, and you pair them with a good technician. And then once they've, climaxed at that position, then you put them with a master technician. We just kept moving these $15 mechanics up, and we had, a $35 mechanic and a $45 mechanic. And we just brought these guys up with these other guys. But by putting that initial investment in them, we bred this just undying, unkillable loyalty. And our guys just stuck with us forever. They were using better quality tools. We weren't pushing a mechanic to the side, making them feel stupid or belittled. And it created a much more harmonious workplace where we got a better result for the customer. We got a better result for the business. And we shut down our rollover turnover rate. Our retention rate went up. So just investing in technicians is huge. As the shop owner, getting out of the way, knowing that you can do it faster or quicker or whatever, it's like being a parent. If you tie your kids' shoes for them every single day, they're never going to learn to tie their shoes. It's no different in business. As a business owner, if you're constantly tying your employees' shoes and following them around and helicopter parenting that employee, they're never going to become good, and eventually they get lazy. You eventually teach them to stop producing, and they're just collecting a paycheck. So backing up the employees, helping the employees grow, turning a $15 technician into a $45 technician over time, that all takes a long time. And by the time that actually happens, you've trained your employees to be A+ employees, but you've also trained your clientele to be A+ clientele. And so over the years, these clients get to know these technicians like, oh, well, Kevin installed a fast fuel system on my Dodge 5 years ago. I want Kevin to install my turbo. And so we had customers requesting their technicians, which is huge. That's a huge compliment to the technician. It's a huge compliment to the business. Everybody's happy in that situation. The customer's no longer even looking at the price on the bill. They just know the quality that they got last time, and they want that again. And so you start training your customers to be better customers while you're training your employees to be better employees. So that was cool to watch it happen. It took a long time. It took 10 years to watch that come full circle, but it was really cool watching our customers fire themselves. Like the guy that wanted to come in and complain about the estimate, and he wanted to complain about the part, and he wanted to bring his own parts in. There's a place in the shop for that guy, and they're selling themselves a terrible experience. And so after a couple of terrible experiences, and then when you explain to the customer, hey, I priced out X, Y, and Z, and you didn't like those, you wanted this cheap option, you didn't like the good technician, you wanted the cheap technician. So we sold you exactly what you asked for, and you got the experience you sold yourself. Either that guy would go away and never come back, or he would turn into a good customer that no longer questioned the bill or the estimate. And so that was just sticking to your guns. Stick to your guns. Don't feel bad for the customer. Every time you feel bad for the customer, you try to help the customer out. That's the customer that's leaving you a 1-star review and calling you at midnight and crapping all over your name.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Joe talked about educating the customer, selling on value, not price. We talked about not helicoptering. That's a big one. If you're trying to do the work for that technician, you end up in one-man shop, even if you got 10 techs, right? You teach them to be lazy. Man, there's so much. And man, maybe if you're looking in the mirror, you see some things you do. We're here to help you improve. We're not here to judge you. So whether you're listening live or the replay, stay tuned because we're going to continue to help you grow. So you both named a couple things. Someone's looking at this replay, maybe they're catching one of the clips. What am I looking at? I'm looking in the mirror. What am I seeing where I say, hey, I need to be in the Diesel Alliance community? Joe, what are 2 or 3 points where like, oh, hey, that's me. I need to be here.
I think one of the big ones, and this is coming from me. I'm a one-man dog and pony show at the moment. I've got a part-time, like some help from my nephew that comes in part-time and does stuff when I need an extra set of hands, because there's some things you need 2 sets of hands for. But for the most part, trying to do this alone, or like right now, I've been in shops where, we had a big crew and we all worked together, and then I've been in shops where we didn't. Um, everybody's at each other's throat. But owning a shop and going off on my own like this, I'm right at 2 years off on my own, a little over 2 years off on my own. And the biggest thing about TDA is I know, one, if I need something or I have a question, there's a lot of people here in this chat that I know personally that I can hit them up, say, hey, I have a question. I know Vinny's a great resource, just to put him on the hot spot because he's sitting here and he is a great resource. And he's like, you never asked me anything. It's like, no, because I watch your videos and learn stuff from them. So, but it's also this attitude, the attitude of the group. If you've been around, the TDA group is, there's a lot of overlap with the Summit 7-3 group. And if you go, there's a lot of collaboration and talk there. I go to a lot of events. I've been to a lot of events. I've been to a lot of conferences. You do not see the kind of collaboration that you get from the attitude in a group of people. I think that comes from the group of people putting it together, is there's this attitude of supporting each other. And I mean, I don't know how to sell it to you any better than that. Like this, it's very overwhelming to know that you're doing this alone and you're trying to find information. There's so much gatekeeping in the industry. Having something like the TDA as a resource is a great thing. And when I say industry, I don't just mean turning wrenches, whether it's business marketing. I'm way deep on knowing too much about that. And whether it's business marketing, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's customer communication, training your technicians, any of that stuff, there's enough resources here. And as more people participate, it's more resources are accessible. And I just, there's no reason to not participate in the open source information that's available here. You can't open source experience, and that's what you get here.
I love that open source experience. Hey, that's gonna end up in a reel somewhere. Vinny, oh, hey, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We're going to get to our questions here in just a little bit. Large or small, we want them all. Vinny, I'm looking in the mirror. I'm like, man, is the Diesel Alliance for me? Should I be here? What am I looking for? What should I see where I'm asking myself, hey, this is for me?
Well, the biggest thing is I've been involved in a couple of different businesses over the years. I grew up in cattle, grew up working cattle in Montana. That's a whole different nightmare of a business. I worked in timber frame and log homes and construction. That's a completely different, crazy business. And then the diesel stuff was completely a hobby. I mean, I was 20 years old, making way too much money, didn't know what to do with it all. And so I started building a drag race truck. My wife and I, our entire dating life was drag racing, import cars. And then I got into the diesels and we went to the track one night and I watched a 12-valve Cummins just completely slaughter this Lancer Evolution 8. And I was like, holy freaking crap, what just happened? To say I got like I've often wondered how people get addicted to heroin. If it's anything like turbos and big injectors and nitrous, I completely get it because I was completely addicted. And it was very competitive. It was very, back then, there was no Facebook. There was a forum called Competition Diesel. And it was pure, for lack of a better word, just shit talkery on a professional level. Like, I am not a very good shit talker. And I would just sit here and watch these guys go back and forth, like quarter mile times. We're getting faster and faster. And this guy's like, well, I just ran this. And this guy's like, well, how'd you do it? And what was your setup? And, little stupid old me, I'm like, don't even know how to turn a computer on. I'm like yelling at my wife, like, hey, Ma, turn on the computer. And, I'm doing the old hunt and peck, trying to like, you know, get involved. But I hated the douchebaggery that I saw going on of these people just talking smack and name calling, and it was very gross and kind of embarrassing to watch adult humans act like that. And so I kind of came into it from a different point. I was building a common rail Cummins back then, 2003, 2004, 2005, right in that timeline. And so instead of being just another guy talking crap, I decided to start writing these technical bulletins because nobody knew how to make horsepower with a common rail back then. They were brand new. 12 valves, 24 valves had been around for a long time. People were doing a lot to them. And so every time I would do an upgrade on my common rail Cummins, I would write up an article. And it was, I would read the manufacturer's instructions. It's like, oh, you get this part and you need a 10 millimeter socket and a vice grips and a Phillips head screwdriver. And then the instructions would say something like, simply remove the cold air intake and bolt this thing on. And I'm like, not even close, man. Like, it took an hour to get the cold air intake off because the intercooler pipe ran in front of it. And that was tied into a radiator bracket, which was tied into a coolant hose. And so I would sit there and write these write-ups about very in depth. You're going to have to remove this line. It's going to require these two tools. Once you get that out of the way, you're going to have to remove this part. And it's going to require these three tools. And so I was doing these really big write-ups, and it completely changed kind of the scene back then of everybody just being douchebags and making fun of each other to creating a little bit of a more helpful and a more educational environment. I love that. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the feedback that I got off of that. And so as I moved forward with my diesel career, I just always kept that at the forefront of my brain. Is there are no industry secrets. There are no trade secrets. That's all BS. It's something you figured out that nobody else could figure out, and you can sit there on your high horse and pretend you're better than everybody and lord it over them that you can swap out a turbo in 2.5 hours, or you can educate that shop down the road and explain to them how you do it in the 2.5 hours and just help people. And so that's very much how I've worked within the industry for the last 2 decades, is just trying to be helpful. And then being friends with Bill and Angela, they very much have the exact same mindset. And so the first year that I was invited to go to Summit 7.3 was actually as the service writer for a diesel shop. And I was excited to go and meet other shop owners and those discussions of what they were struggling with. And I explained to them what I was doing to overcome those obstacles and those hurdles within the business. And the first year of Summit 7.3, dude, I walked away just mind blown. Like, for the next 6 months, my phone and my computer and my Facebook Messenger and my emails and my texts were just off the chain because, you're having these fun little conversations at the event, but then the event's over and then people go out into their lives and they're having to put this stuff into practice. And it's just that constant communication and staying in touch with people and reminding them, it's like, hey man, last time we talked, you were underselling your labor. You fixed that. You had a good 6 months and now you're struggling. You've fallen back into your old ways again. And so it's just keeping friends accountable and just being that helpful reminder when people start to slump back into those old habits, because that's all it is at the end of the day. We all have habits. We all have things that we're comfortable with and not comfortable with. We tend to gravitate towards what we're comfortable with and we avoid the uncomfortable. Well, a lot of times the uncomfortable is what takes that small diesel shop and turns them into a big diesel shop from a good living for a family of four into making five technicians very wealthy. So it's getting out of that mindset of I'm the shop owner and you have to make my house payment and put groceries on the table and pay the shop rent and all this. Getting from just being comfortable with that to growing a success story to where you could have you start making enough money as a shop. The thing I hear from shop owners the most that drives me the most nuts is like, oh, I felt bad for the guy. Well, I felt bad for the guy, so I gave him the turbo at cost. I felt bad for the guy, so I came in on Saturday and I did the work for free. That is never going to end well. If you feel bad for people, make so much freaking money Monday through Friday, January through August, that puts you in a position to where you can shut your shop down for a week and do a charity week. Like tell all your employees, hey, we're going to pay you for this entire week. We've got all these potential customers that can't afford our services or our goods, and we're going to do a charity event. We're going to gift them the parts. We're going to gift them the labor. There will be no bill. There will be no warranty, but we're going to make it clear that we're doing this thing. We've made so much money throughout the rest of the year that we're going to shut down the shop for 1 week to paying customers. We're just going to do this charity thing for these low income families that are struggling. That is going to be much more appreciated than a cheap bill. A cheap bill is going to turn into 1-star reviews. A free bill is going to turn into somebody beating your drum till the day the cows come home. Like you're never going to have a bad experience with that guy.
I always
And
say
so it's
cheap
just
bills create expensive customers.
100%. Yes.
Mhm. Man, wow. Okay. I love it. And I know you could keep going, which is why we created the training series. So let's do a quick reset here. Sure, Bruce Hill, community manager for the Diesel Alliance. This is our first fireside chat. Thank you so much for joining us. We still have some really great topics to cover this evening. So I just dropped the Zoom link in here. You can copy and paste that from the chat. We'll throw it in the communities you're in and a Facebook group you're in. Invite some more folks to be here. And at the end, I'm going to give everyone a chance to share the Diesel Alliance community with their network. All right. So we're glad you're here. Also, if you have questions, throw those in the chat. We will get to those. So now we're going to pivot to a little bit of rapid fire. A couple of quick questions, quick answers, Vinny. And aren't already members. All right. So I want you to think of your answers for someone who isn't already in the Diesel Alliance, who maybe doesn't know Bill or Angela. All right. Give me a thumbs up if you can still hear me okay. Zoom is being Zoom. Okay, awesome. And let's do an introduction. Let's do a quick introduction again. Who is Joanna Byrne?
Oh, that's a complicated question.
Short version.
Oh, huh. I am a independent performance diesel shop owner and a certified dealer instructor for John Deere and a former program coordinator and assistant professor of diesel service technology. And I'm a huge enthusiast too, because I think you can be a business owner and an enthusiast.
Love what you do. Who would have thought? I love it. Great to have you, Joe. Vinny, who is Vinny Himes?
Just a crazy Montana cowboy that loves helping people in diesel trucks.
I love it. Thanks so much, Vinny. So you guys mentioned Summit 7.3. What the heck is a Summit 7.3, Vinny? Short version.
It's an event that puts like-minded business owners in a big giant room together and some really great guest speakers that touch on the things that get small business owners out of their own way. I think that's the easiest way to put it. A lot of times as small business owners, we get in their own way.
I know I have, which I appreciate. My friends, my community are helping me break down those obstacles. Joe, what's Summit 7.3 and why should someone think about attending?
Summit 7.3 is probably the ultimate collaboration event, honestly, as far as not just industry information, but like Vinny said, putting like-minded people in the same room together. That's a huge thing. I think I've been to a few events and not just Summit, but across the industry, and very I can't name another one that has the energy that Summit 7.3 has.
You heard it here first. If you were here in I don't even know what year it is, 2026, your responsibility is to tell more people. So 2027 is going to be our biggest yet. And then 2028 will be our biggest ever. You see where I'm going with this. So in the meantime, between time, when you can't get down to good old Georgia, we're doing a virtual learning series. Starting in July, we're going to have turning problem customers into promoters. We're going to talk about book time, how to price jobs for profit. We're talking about building value in your business, the compassionate upsell. No sleazy salespeople over here. We're going to talk about selling the customer a good experience. All these options these days, why should they work with you? And last but maybe not least, for that series, get out of your own way, removing the owner bottleneck to grow. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of go back and forth between you two. Let's see here. Joe, what does it mean, real quickly, to turn problem customers into promoters?
So a problem customer can be a lot of things, as y'all all know. I think my favorite problem customer is the one that already knows everything. They love to leave great reviews when they don't get what they want. But to turn a problem customer into your greatest promoter is you're providing something for them that they can't get anywhere else. And a lot of times that is compassion and communication. And I know it's like compassion, but yeah, that's a thing. It's their vehicle they rely on. Sometimes you have to be compassionate about the situation. But you do have to set boundaries too, just to be clear. But that's the big thing. Compassion and communication to turn your problem customers into your biggest fans. Sometimes it doesn't take much. Sometimes it's a bottle of water on a hot day just to cool everybody down so we can have a conversation.
I love it. Thank you. Vinny, we talk about book time real quick. What does it mean to price jobs for profit?
Well, the biggest problem I have with book time is book time was created in a perfect environment. So you got a perfect state-of-the-art facility with the best tools, the best technicians, with all the training classes and courses available to them for free at next to nothing. And that environment says that swapping out this turbocharger is a 4.5 hour job. Once that truck's 30 years old and that customer's worked on it themselves with their crappy tools and they've rounded off all the bolts and stripped out all the nuts and screws and rerouted wiring harnesses improperly, that's no longer a 4.5 hour job. And that goes back to educating the customer. That requires popping the hood with the customer and pointing these things out. Hey, somebody worked on this, they put it together wrong. Do you want me to put it back together right? Hey, somebody worked on this and they left these 5 bolts out. Do you want to make sure those bolts are in there when we get done with it? That's just one-on-one personal education with the customer. Explain to them what you're charging, why you're charging it, and give them the option to purchase that value from you. If the guy says, you know what, the truck runs fine without those 3 bolts, I don't care. Okay, well, it's noted on your invoice. You refused it. I offered it to you. Here's a dollar amount next to it. And so when that customer leaves and they leave you a bad review because they end up on the side of the road, you've got that invoice. You say, you post it. Hey, customer refused, customer refused, customer refused. We saw it. We priced it out. We acknowledged it and recommended it, and they refused it. And so that's where you turn problem customers into promoters. One of 2 things are going to happen. They're going to get really embarrassed and they're never going to talk to you again. They're going to get really embarrassed. They're going to get humbled, and they're going to be your best cheerleader. And I've been doing that for decades, and it works. So you either fire a customer, get rid of a problem, or you educate a customer and you turn them into your biggest cheerleader.
I love it. Now, what's interesting, I'm looking at the training series. Right after pricing jobs for profit, we have building value. Vinny, what's the difference between value and profit? Now, you've touched on this, so you will repeat yourself, but one more time for the camera.
So what a lot of shops do is they price themselves to their environment. So we're in a rural community. It's all hay fields and cattle around here. So these cattle farmers and these guys growing hay and soybeans and corn and whatever around here, they're not loaded. They're not rich. They're not super, super wealthy. They just need their truck to complete a job, and they need it to run for as long as possible before the next visit. And so what a lot of shops will do is they say, "Oh, well, we live in a poor community, so our shop rate's $75 an hour." But when your shop rate's $75 an hour and diesel mechanicing is expensive, if the mechanics are expensive, the tools are expensive, the shop space is expensive, the real estate to park 100 trucks on is expensive. You want to be on a main road, that's expensive. So you can be the $75 an hour shop that's hidden back in the woods, working out of a Quonset hut behind grandma's house. There's clients that need that, want that, and that's all they can afford. And that's great. Those people have their place. But for a diesel shop that's wanting to be on the map, a diesel shop that's wanting to grow, you have to price yourself into growth. So if you started out at $75 an hour, a good rule of thumb, and I don't think that exists anywhere in 2026. I'm going way back in my experience to come up with that number, 12 years ago. But if you started out at $75 an hour, your shop should be growing by $20 an hour per year. That means that your shop is becoming more efficient. You're investing in better tooling. You're investing in better lifts. You're investing in better people. You're investing in better software. Your shop rate has to grow annually. If your shop rate's not growing annually, then it means your shop is dead. If your shop is dead, you're probably not having a super fun time being a diesel shop owner. And that's been my personal experience. So when I go into a shop and the shop owner's miserable, cantankerous, a little bit of a curmudgeon, a lot of times I have to sit them down and say, "Hey, you're too cheap. You're working yourself to death. You're given 110% to reap 5% profit. You have to reevaluate that business, make the adjustments, lose those low hanging customers, and move on." And everybody's so scared to lose those customers, those family, friends, whatever. They're going to go off to the other $75 an hour shop and have that bad experience. And they're going to know what you have to offer because you put it on paper for them, and they will come back to you. So stop being scared of growth and stop being scared of losing customers. Sometimes that customer you lose this year will be your best customer next year.
Thanks, Vinny. Joe, session 4 is the compassionate upsell. A lot of these folks aren't sales superstars and not killer closers, not master manipulators. They just care about what they do. How can we upsell a client and care about the client at the same time?
So my big thing with upselling is it needs to be ethical. And I think that's something everybody in the room can nod their head about. I see a lot of unethical upselling in the particular area that I'm at, which is part of the reason that I got into this. Because you weren't selling me a high pressure common rail injection pump for 7.3. I knew better. But anyways, as far as a compassionate upsell, I think the big thing is you need to know your customer. And I don't mean like you need to go sit down and have dinner with them. You need to ask them questions. And it's not just, "Hey, what's the year, make, and model?" Like, are you committed to keeping this vehicle? Is this a truck that you're willing to, is it paid for? That's one of my favorite questions. It's none of my business what your payments are, but if it's paid for, it's worth fixing a lot more than a truck that you're making payments on, that it would be cheaper for you to unload. And I have actually recommended customers and then helped them to unload a truck it wasn't worth fixing, that they were making payments on, and help them find a truck that was in better condition for a lower payment. And I think that feels like a waste of time because you're like, "Well, I just got rid of a bunch of work that I could have done." I mean, this truck, the particular one I'm thinking of an example, I mean, it needed about $30,000 worth of work. The guy owed 40 on it, and it was worth about 20. He was upside down and it was in really bad shape. And I just straight up told him, I said, "You need to, if you can unload this truck, and get into something else, man." We found him a low mileage truck, exact same trim package, exact same year model, a third of the miles, for cheaper price. And he cut his payments in half. And I have seen him twice in 2 years. Did I lose $30,000 worth of work? Yes, absolutely. But this guy loves me. I get text all the time. "Can I pass your info on to somebody?" Because I'm set up in a recommendation only. Like, you have to have a current customer has to recommend you to come see me. And I mean, like I said, I don't see him for anything because I got him in a truck that's not beat up and falling apart out of the oil field. I think that's a compassionate upsell.
Wow, I don't think I've had that good a service at Chick-fil-A. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. That kind of beats me to the next question. Session 5 is selling the customer a good experience, but I think you answered that pretty clearly. I'm going to recommend you. I'm going to come back if that's how you're treating folks. That's my shop, and there's no other shops in the state. So let's wrap it up with this. What does it mean? I'm gonna let both of y'all answer this one. What does it mean to get out of your own way? While they're answering that, you can put your questions in the chat, and then we'll leave with announcements. Vinny, what does it mean to get out of your own way? Just 30, 60 seconds.
Um, Getting out of your own way is kind of goes back to what I was saying before, where you're feeling bad for the customer. And so you're trying to make the invoice really cheap. That's a disservice to that customer. Don't make the invoice cheap. We are responsible for these vehicles once they leave our facility. Yes, maybe it came in for a bad turbo or an underpowered issue, but it's our job as shop managers, service writers, technicians, shop owners to make sure that this vehicle is reliable for that customer for months and years to come. So take the time to go through the vehicle front to back, top to bottom. Hey, your turbo's shot. That's what it's here for. Your ball joints are worn out 70%. You got 30% life left on them. Your brakes are worn out. This is worn out. That's worn out. Put it all on the bill with a price next to it. These are all things we noticed. This is what you need. And by doing that, you're getting out of your own way because you're so scared of making the invoice so expensive that the customer won't fix the truck. That's not what the customer needs. The customer needs a map of this is where you're at. This is what you need right now. But over the next 6 months, let's look at your budget and let's fix all these other issues so that you and your family don't end up stranded on a camping trip having a terrible experience. For me, that was getting out of my own way. I was so scared to make the invoice expensive that I was selling my customers a bad experience. When I figured that out and stopped doing that, we went to the moon. I mean, it was just the clientele got better, the trucks got better, the shop profits got better, just everything got better.
I love it. No notes. If you are watching this live, you can hop in a Zoom chat. If you are catching the replay, you can hit the chat in Mighty Network and the Diesel Alliance. And most important, tell a friend to tell a friend to be here. All right, Joe, we're going to wrap up. Mitch had a really great question. I think we're going to bring it home with this one. How do we convince people to embrace the collaboration invites? We're all busy, but the collaboration is very important.
I dropped one in the chat, but this is what I'm saying. We have to model it if we're gonna ask people to collaborate, invite people to collaborate, and we want to be making a change in the industry and be leaders in the industry. Then that's the core of leadership. We have to model it. We have this great thing called technology where we can do stuff like this. I know Mitch and I have jumped on a. It was a little longer than it needed to be, but Mitch and I could talk. Jumped on a Zoom call and collaborated on, working on some SEO optimization things and, YouTube channel ideas and stuff. And we can do that. I think, we should model it. I think doing lives like this is a great way to do it. I think that, maybe we don't necessarily have to do it within the TDA channel. A lot of us have YouTube channels and collaboration of sharing information and stuff is a great way to set the standard in the industry and tone too. We do need to moderate our audience. There's a lot of really negative energy out there on the internet, and the way that we behave in our audience in the comments and stuff, whether it's on our page or somebody else's, is another way to model our goal with this.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for leading by example. I want to thank everyone that tuned in live. Matt, Jim, Mitch, we appreciate y'all coming in, staying active in the chats. We're not talking to ourselves. We appreciate that. Joe, Vinny, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and just your lives with us. So, two things. This is all I ask. As a thank you, all I ask is you tell two people, thedieselalliance.com. Tap in for all things that help you grow your business and dive deeper into the world of diesel. Thedieselalliance.com. And no excuses. We've created a free tier so that you can build community, so that you can create collaboration, and we're going to continue to pour into you all and help you succeed. Our next event is July 9th. How will you know when and where, what time? You're going to go to thedieselalliance.com. You see a pattern here? You can copy paste that, share it in all your Facebook groups, text 5 people. Bill and Angela, any closing words as we dismiss?
I guess I'm up. Uh, Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Vinny. We do have some new and exciting things coming in the Diesel Alliance, including, am I allowed to say it, Bill? Minotaur training. It's something that's been asked for many years. We're finally doing it. Bill has agreed to do Minotaur training, I believe, every 2 weeks. So tune into the Diesel Alliance, see where that goes. But we will be training how to tune your own vehicles. So definitely tune in for that. The dieselalliance.com. All the details will be there.
Oh, wonderful. Can't leave it off any better than that. Listen, have a great day. Have a great week. Until we see you all again, we'll see you in the Diesel Alliance. Have a good night, y'all. Cheers.